The opening minute of this video needs to cut through every weak modern winter tip and set the tone for what we're really here to uncover. During the Second World War, frostbite didn't just slow soldiers down, it crippled entire units, destroyed mobility, and caused more non-battle casualties than many people realize. But there was one field-expedient boot trick, rarely talked about today, that turned the tide for countless soldiers fighting in brutal European and Siberian temperatures. It wasn't fancy, it wasn't issued by quartermasters, and it didn't rely on thick socks or better boots. It was a small adjustment that created a thermal buffer inside the footwear and stopped frostbite before it ever started. If you're watching this on the Prepper Historian, subscribe now, because what you're about to learn is exactly the kind of forgotten technique that still works in modern cold weather survival. And once you understand it, you'll never treat cold weather foot care the same way again. The first thing to understand is that frostbite isn't primarily caused by cold air. It's caused by conductive heat loss, meaning your feet lose warmth directly into the frozen ground through the sole of your boots. During the Second World War, many armies really struggled with inadequate winter gear, especially in the early stages of the conflict. Leather-soled boots, worn-out rubber, and those thin insoles just drained heat at a rate no wool sock could ever keep up with. Soldiers in places like Bastogne, the Karelian front, and the Apennines learned pretty quickly that insulation around the foot didn't matter much if the sole was losing warmth faster than the body could replenish it. This is where the lost boot hack entered the story. The trick was actually quite simple. Soldiers inserted a moisture-wicking barrier inside their boots, but not just anywhere. They placed it beneath their socks and above the insole, creating a disposable thermal shield. The most successful version came from the Finnish and Soviet fronts, where men used anything from birch bark layers to thin pieces of wool, felt, cardboard coated in wax, or even crumpled newspaper flattened into a pad. The key wasn't the material, although some worked better than others. It was the placement. By interrupting the transfer of heat into the frozen ground, these makeshift inserts created a dead air space that slowed heat loss dramatically. The logic behind this was rooted in field necessity, not theory. Soldiers found that doubling socks didn't work if the sole of the boot was cold, because the body heat had nowhere to go except out. By inserting an extra layer between the foot and the sole, they created, well, a sort of microclimate inside the boot. The foot warmed the barrier warmed the insole, and honestly, the entire boot stayed warmer for longer. This hack kept circulation stable, prevented the skin from reaching freezing temperature, and let soldiers travel and fight for hours without the stabbing pain of impending frostbite. One of the most documented examples of this technique came from Finnish ski troops during the Winter War. These soldiers fought in temperatures that plunged well below -20, yet their frostbite casualties were, surprisingly, shockingly low. You know, part of the credit goes to their boots, but honestly, a larger part comes from their habit of inserting birch bark under their socks. Birch bark has these natural oils that repel moisture and, well, trap heat really effectively. Even when it was soaked, It still retained its insulating properties, which made it just ideal for those long marches in the snow. Soviet troops eventually copied this trick, often using layers of newspaper when birch bark wasn't available. And German soldiers during the retreat from Moscow adopted cardboard inserts coated with candle wax to keep their feet dry. American soldiers in the Ardennes, on the other hand, used flattened K-ration boxes lined with dry cloth. To apply this knowledge today, you don't need to be stuck in a winter trench. This trick works anywhere cold feet can ruin your day, from winter camping to off-grid living to emergency bug-out travel. The modern equivalent is to create an insulating layer inside your boot that slows conductive heat loss. One practical example is cutting a thin piece of wool, felt or closed-cell foam the shape of your insole. Place it directly under your sock, not beneath the factory insole. This maintains a warm barrier close to your foot. Another method is coating cardboard inserts with melted wax and letting them dry before sliding them into the boot. They're disposable, lightweight and highly insulating. Even in a pinch, a folded piece of dry paper towel or newspaper can buy several extra hours of warmth if boots start soaking through. It's important to note that while high-tech winter boots exist today, many people still wear standard work boots, hiking boots, or rubber boots during winter situations. These offer almost no insulation in the sole, which means the WWII trick is still completely relevant. The same principle applies to sleeping bags in winter survival scenarios. If your bag sits directly on frozen ground, the cold steals heat through conduction. Soldiers in WW2 place branches, straw or cloth beneath their bedrolls. Today, the same effect can be achieved with a foam pad or even a folded jacket. Another example of applying this method is during extended outdoor work. Farmers, loggers and construction workers in winter conditions often rely on heavy boots that still lack proper insulation. Even if the boot is waterproof, cold quickly transfers through the midsole. A simple insulating pad can prevent numbness, maintain blood flow and reduce the risk of long-term tissue damage. Hunters in snow-covered environments have used felt inserts for decades without realizing they were continuing a WWII. Turn to battlefield trick. What makes this technique evergreen is that it solves the real problem, heat loss through the ground. It's a practical, low-tech, field-tested solution with roots in some of the harshest wartime environments ever recorded. And it still works exactly as well today as it did 80 years ago. If you learned something new from WWII's secret boot hack that stopped frostbite cold, the lost trick that still saves toes. Today, subscribe and share this video with other serious history and survival enthusiasts. There are countless forgotten wartime techniques worth studying, and this channel is here to keep them alive.